So the official docking station for the Steam Deck is now available, and I've been messing around with it for a couple of weeks, so that's what today's video is all about. Sorting out whether or not the official Steam Deck dock is actually worth your hard-earned dollars, which should come to about 89 bucks. Now, right out of the box, you'll get the Steam Deck dock itself, an official OEM power supply that matches the original one that comes with the Steam Deck, and that's about it. So let's go ahead and talk about what it is, what it isn't, and the scenarios under which I think it does make sense, and ones where it probably does not make sense. But first, let's just go ahead and talk about the ports that are actually on the Steam Deck dock, and the functionality that you get out of those. Now, as for the ports on the dock, you're going to find 3 USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, a gigabit Ethernet port, a USB-C power port to make sure that you can get juice into the dock and by extension your Steam Deck, an HDMI 2.0 port, a DisplayPort 1.4 port, and then finally, of course, you have a USB-C cable that actually connects the dock to your Steam Deck. And all of this is presented into a pretty densely packed package, because the dock itself is only about 5 inches by 2 inches, and despite the fact that it's travel size, it doesn't feel cheaply made at all from a build quality standpoint. It actually feels pretty solid. And they really didn't overdo it on the branding either. There's just one subtle Steam Deck logo that's on the top of the unit. All in all, I have to say I really like this minimalist, sort of understated approach to the dock, where it really just ends up looking like a natural extension of the Steam Deck whenever it's docked up. And right off the bat, I have to say I really appreciate that they included 2 different display output options with both an HDMI and the DisplayPort. Now, personally, I never really use 2 different external monitors with my Steam Deck, even though that is something that you can do. I mean, most of the time, unless I'm, managing a bunch of ROM files or something like that, I don't spend a whole lot of time in desktop mode, but it's really nice that the flexibility is included there if somebody wanted to lean more heavily on the Steam Deck as a PC rather than just a gaming device. Although I will say that one area where I was particularly curious about the display functionality is in terms of how well it would handle an ultra-wide monitor. So that monitor that I've got back here is like a 5120 by 1080 monitor, I think. It's a Samsung like super ultra-wide, like 49-inch monitor. And I was concerned that it might not just natively detect that resolution, but that wasn't the case. And as soon as I hooked it up through a DisplayPort cable, it instantly detected it, and I was able to just use all of that real estate to my heart's content whenever I was using it in desktop mode. Now, while I definitely appreciated that I could take advantage of all of that real estate in desktop PC mode, I didn't really have any games that I could test with like a super ultra wide display like that back there to really see if any gameplay would hold up very well. But even if I did, I'm not so sure that I would, because based on a lot of the videos that I've seen on YouTube floating around, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of games that are just well optimized to really, push those kind of graphics and have a good experience in an ultra wide setting. Now, I have seen some videos where people got it to work with some tinkering. I think Open Surprise's YouTube channel, he actually did an ultra wide display with Spider-Man, and he was able to tweak it a little bit to get it playable, but it still seemed like he was topping out around like, I want to say like the mid 20s or high 20s in terms of the frame rate that he could get. So ultimately, even though you can hook up an ultra wide display to it, you're probably going to be best served using it as a PC display and not necessarily in a gaming capacity. But nonetheless, I did try out some games at a more meager resolution and did find that they played well, as long as I didn't play a game that was overly taxing or anything. But yeah, for me personally, I'm probably going to stick with doing the majority of my gameplay on the Steam Deck in portable mode. Now, display aside, the other ports that I tested, like the USB ports and the Ethernet, worked just fine and exactly as you'd expect, so there's really not a whole lot for me to say about them. Although I will say that I just really appreciate that they included 3 USB 3.1 ports, not just because USB 3.1 Gen 1 is pretty quick, I think at like 5 gigabits per second or something like that, but the fact that they are all uniform, I really appreciate it, because I can't tell you how many times I went to plug in a device that required faster speed, and then I plugged it into the wrong or a slower speed USB port, but obviously that's not a problem you'll run into here, considering they are all USB 3.1 ports. Now, as far as actually putting your dock into the deck, it's a snug fit. So if you have any kind of like an outer case on your Steam Deck, it's probably not going to fit in there. I mean, if you have like a skin on it, it's probably going to be fine. But yeah, I had to take mine out of the kill switch case, because even if it would have fit into the dock, it would not have allowed me to put the low profile right angle USB-C connector into the port on the top, because the case just wouldn't have allowed it to make contact. So that was kind of a bummer, but ultimately if you're not playing with any kind of a case, or if you only have it on when you're going to be, taking it out and about or traveling, should be fine. But yeah, as long as your deck is, doesn't have anything thicker than like a skin on it, it should be pretty fine, and it fits in there very snugly. So that's what the official docking station for the Steam Deck provides, but is it actually worth 89 bucks? I think that's a little complicated. On the one hand, I would say that if the price doesn't bother you and this gives you all of the ports that you need, then sure, it's totally worth it. And I would say one of the biggest advantages of going with the official dock is that Valve has a vested interest in making sure that it performs well. Plus, they've already proven a great track record of taking into account player feedback and making sure that they regularly update their hardware, and more firmware updates are definitely going to be coming out for the dock on a long enough timeline, so the fact that they're going to do all that they can to make sure that it continues to perform well with the Steam Deck itself is definitely no small thing in my book. And I would say that another nice bonus of buying the official dock is that it does come with an OEM power supply, which I found that to be actually pretty handy. Most of the time I actually leave my Steam Deck just kind of docked up over there next to my desk, but if I wanted to take it to a different part of the house where I could still plug it in, I didn't like the idea of having to like crawl behind my desk to go ahead and unplug the power for where I've got it docked up, and then take it with me and then bring it back. So it's really nice to have an extra one, not just for running around the house, but also if you are going to take it on some kind of a trip and you don't want to mess up your current docking station, it's pretty cool that they included one. And I would say the final reason that I like it, my argument for going for the official dock, is that I really do like how well the Steam Deck actually fits into it. And even though there are a lot of other third-party docks you can get out there, not all of them also function as a stand, so it's kind of nice that it's pulling double duty there. But on the other hand, $90 is a pretty good chunk of change, and if you don't really care about docked mode that much, or you just don't really need the quality assurances of a first-party product like this, particularly if you already have a dock that's working for you, then I would say it's probably safe to skip. Now for me personally, the biggest thing I wish they would have included here would be an SD card reader. Right now, the dock that I've been using prior to getting the official dock is actually an Anker dock that I showcased forever ago, and I always put in the description of all my videos because it's working really, really well. But on the flip side, that did not have an Ethernet port. Meanwhile, the official dock does have an Ethernet port, but it does not have an SD card reader. So I guess I'm kind of stuck in a catch-22 situation here, but ultimately it's not that big of a deal. I could always plug in a card reader to one of the USB ports if I needed to, or just plug in like a USB hard drive to one of those ports if I really wanted to shift a bunch of ROM files around or something. But still, again, for my personal use case, it would have been nice to have an SD card reader. I would say my final opinion on the dock is that it's definitely solid, if not slightly overpriced, but ultimately it does exactly what it sets out to do. Now, if you're in need of a dock, you've been waiting on the first-party dock anyways, it will definitely serve you well, but there's also nothing wrong with going the third-party route and saving some dough either. Ultimately, I would say that the official dock just feels like a hardware extension of what Valve set out to do with its philosophy anyways for the Steam Deck, which is to give you a maximum amount of flexibility over your OS, the software that you run, and the games that you choose to play. But hey, what about you? What do you think of the official dock? Is there anything that I haven't thought about here, or any use cases that I should be considering? Or if you've been using a third-party dock that you'd recommend and you think I should check out here on the channel, maybe in some future video, please do let me know. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.